This is Shooting the Ropes with its host, Sean Q-Ball Sisk.
You're listening to Shooting the Ropes. I'm your host, Sean Q-Ball Sisk. And of course, back in the 90s, we had the WCW, WWF Monday Night Wars. We had the beginnings of the WWF Attitude Era. But also during that time, we started to see an uprising in wrestling, not just around the world, but especially in Detroit, which has this great history and it dating all the way back to the 60s with the Sheik and stuff. And today, speaking about how Michigan wrestled the 90s, is Jimi V. Jimi V, thank you for coming on the show.
Sean, is this the Sean, the most hated man in Michigan?
Yes, that is true.
Oh,
true.
It is an honor, my friend.
Thank you very much. What's kind of funny is that there's some people that do remember that moniker and some people that don't.
Mm-hmm.
Which is funny because some people are like, how do you get that name? I'm like, well, you'll have to listen to archives to find out about how I got that name or how I dubbed myself that name.
So you're basically baiting them into listening to your archives. Well, I'm going to be the bigger man, even though I'm not a big man, and share with you how I came up with Jimi V.
Okay.
So
before we get to that though, hold on. Before we get to that though, for the people that may not know who you are, because this isn't just for the people from Michigan that are going to be listening. It's going to be people all around the world. How would you describe yourself to everybody else?
Okay, so going back, let's just say I'm an undersized underdog, a shorter, smaller, high-flying version of The Rock, but without as much charisma, maybe a 1/1000th of the money, and I basically played almost a straight baby face, like a Tito Santana or some guy that runs out, shakes hands, kisses babies, slaps the hands, and is just a straight-up old cheesy good guy that was being phased out in the Attitude Era, where a lot of guys just wanted to shave their heads, have goatee, wear jorts, and flip people off and drink beer. And I went the complete opposite, and just was the good guy that in my interviews it sounded like it would be any Sports Center interview with a professional athlete, where it's not really overly showmanshipy, but just like straight, as if it was a pure shoot. And it worked for me. It wouldn't work for some guys, or it might be too vanilla. But for some reason it worked for me. And the days of doing moonsaults, 450s, things that you see just about every guy with the capability of doing, it was still a new style in the United States, and the mainstream wrestling, like WWF, WCW, and Paul Heyman and ECW, that style was coming in. The Mysterios, Psychosis, they were doing that stuff, and it was still something that would pop a crowd. Let's put it that way. It wasn't like, oh, it's just another setup move. It was, a guy would do a Hurricane Rana, and it was a finisher. The 450, that was my signature move, that, was a finisher. But, everything progresses.
Mm-hmm. That's true.
Yeah.
Very true.
So I think that sums it up.
Yeah, something like that. Now, before we go to how you got your name and when you started training, obviously a wrestling fan before you started decide to get into the business. How did it go from watching and being a fan to getting into the business and training with Al Snow?
Well, what happened was unlike a lot of little boys and maybe some little girls growing up, all my friends, middle school and junior high, whatever, they were all wrestling fans, and I just didn't see the appeal. I watched regular sports, and it wasn't until midway through high school that it was a Saturday morning, and I started flipping around, and I saw like the Ultimate Warrior, Ravishing Rick Rude. I saw these bodybuilders, and I was starting to get a little bug to work out and read the fitness magazines and everything. And I was like, these guys look like bodybuilders, and what are they doing in this ring? And I fell in love with it. So I came to it as a fan, midway through teen years, when a lot of boys are like putting away their wrestling and playing, regular sports and everything. So I was definitely in the minority as far as being a wrestling fan in my high school. And so, I did play sports and everything, but I loved watching pro wrestling. And it was something that, unlike sports, which has its seasons, it was year round. And I was like, oh my God, there's entertainment value every single, every week. There's no off season. So I started watching it that way. And then it was in my junior year that I started going to the store, like to the drug stores and, grocery stores, wherever. And I would just comb the shelves looking for wrestling magazines. And I would buy everything you could find and read it cover to cover. And I was looking for wrestling schools. And it wasn't like, you had the internet or anything to look for stuff. It was, very mysterious. Like, where are these schools? I had heard through the grapevine rumors that there were wrestling schools you could go to. And a lot of my friends were like, you can never do that. You're too small. I'm like, no, I'm going to do it. I'm going to, go to the WWF. So much so, here's my passion and commitment that whenever my senior year came around, I was dating this girl, a real cute girl, and she assumed I was going to take her to prom. Well, the problem was that the prom night was the very first Flair Hogan house show match, and it was at the Palace of Auburn Hills. So I bought a ticket, and I ended up getting a second row ticket since I was just buying one and not for, two or more. So I got a really good seat, and I told her, I said, I'm going to the wrestling show. And she was freaked out by it. She said, no, there's no way you're going to miss prom to go watch men in their underwear. Blah, blah, blah. So she ended up trying to make me jealous and asked my best friend if he would go to prom with her. And he looked at me and he's like, can I take her? I said, yeah. I said, I figured we'd be breaking up after not taking her to prom. So I went to the show. She went to prom with him. Fast forward, less than a decade later, he calls me and he goes, you'll never guess. He goes, we're engaged and we're going to get married. We want you to come to the wedding and tell the story of how we met and how we got together. And I said, okay, what's the date? Wow. He gave me the date, and I looked, and it was one of the dates that WWF had booked me to do a dark match. And I said, I can't go. I'm gonna be wrestling for the dark. And he's like, you got to be kidding me. And I said, no. So that's how that happened. But I read wrestling magazines. Yeah, it's crazy. And I was writing handwritten letters to these different wrestling schools all over the country, looking for any opportunity I could find. And it was one day that I was working out, and a buddy of mine that I went to high school with said that he was going down to Lima, Ohio, to Al Snow's Body Slammers gym for a tryout. And this guy was a football player, like 270. He was an Arab guy. So he had like a shaved head to beard, and he's like, I'm going to be the next Sheik and, big heel and all that. And I said, oh, shit. This is crazy. I said, can I go with you? So I went down to Lima with him on a Saturday, and, he's in there trying out, and Al's, bumping guys around and beating them up and everything. I'm just sitting there to watch. I was terrified to say that I, was there to try out or do anything. I was getting cold feet. And Al looks out of the ring at me, and he goes, you want to try out? He goes, you got that look in your eye. I said, oh, this is really cool. I don't know. I said, he goes, well, are you in college or you have like some job where you can't do this? Or I said, no. I said, I worked like 3 jobs. And, I said, I really, right out of high school, didn't know what I wanted to do. I did know what I wanted to do. I just didn't have the guts to say it. And he goes, why don't you get in the ring? He goes, there's a market for guys like you, like Mexico or Puerto Rico, Japan. So he bumped me around a lot, and he said, yeah, I'd love to train you if you want to, move down to Lima and take a go at this. So I was in heaven. So I went home and I told my parents, I said, I'm going to move to Lima, Ohio. They're like, for what? So to be a pro wrestler. And they just laughed at me. And they knew I was serious when I packed up and I was gone. But, yeah, that's how I got in. And then, the first, few weeks were painstaking, just breaking your body into the bumps and all that. But yeah, that's the scoop, man.
Wow. And that was in 94. That's correct.
Yeah, I was in '94. Yes, sir.
And then how long did you have to go through with the training before you actually had your first match?
I trained through. It was around springtime that we started training, and we were in the ring 6 hours a day, 3 hours in the morning, 3 hours at night, and then we'd be like in the gym, which was on the fourth floor, right below us. We're on the fifth floor of this building of an old converted Masonic temple. Have you ever been to the old Body Slammers gym?
No, I've never made it there. No.
Yeah, it was unbelievable. So it probably was at least 3 to 4 months. I had been at some of the shows, like just, doing security or ticket checks or things like that leading up to that. And then I think I was a lumberjack for one show, just wearing a Body Slammer shirt and everything. So it was at least 3.5, 4 months. And then finally I had my first match, and I didn't have a clue. It was greener than grass, but I knew how to bump, and I didn't understand the psychology yet because I was still trying to perfect, the art and, getting moves down without killing myself or an innocent bystander.
Mm-hmm. Now my question is, because what I've noticed is a lot of the guys that I've spoken to, when they did their training, they were in, the buildings they were in. Now when you were doing your training, it was all basics, correct? There wasn't anything off the top rope and stuff like that. Like a lot of people all think that's what that you learn in training the first couple of weeks, correct?
No, yeah, that's the whole thing. Is I think it's a real shock when you realize you're not doing high spots and doing crazy stuff. You're basically learning how to fall and not kill yourself. You might take 500 back bumps where it started off with you just basically putting your head on the mat and your hands and flipping over on your back, trying to land correctly. And you don't several hundred times. And that's what you continue to do until you could bump. Then you might do a standing back bump, a flip bump. Then we slowly moved into chain wrestling, where you're basically just locking up, learning some roll-ups, some holds. Of course, trying to master the art of the sell. If a guy's got your arm, he's cranking it, make it look like it, he's cranking it, or else he's going to crank it. So, it took a while, but what we would do, and I'm sure this is not, this is just basically what any, young, aspiring professional wrestler would do is, once Al left and went home, we basically were, okay, now I'm jumping off the top rope. Now I'm doing, stupid stuff. And, then we would practice stuff like that, unbeknownst to him, although I'm sure he heard through the grapevine. There had to be stooges. But, we did that stuff. But slowly but surely, Al was a genius, Al Snow, at, trying to figure out, based on your size, your look, your personality, what kind of a style would fit you, and then help to mold you that way without really pushing you too hard. It's still, he gave you freedom. What's your gimmick, a name, etc. How do you want to work? This is the way I think you should do it. But, ultimately it's your career. So, he was like a father to all of us guys back then, where, his word and what he said and everything, we had a lot of respect for him, for the gym. And, little by little, he might say, why don't you try this? I think you're ready. And so, in a class of, say, 6 guys, he could have unity rather, without uniformity. So, if the guy was ready to try moonsault, that guy would try moonsault that night, or, he would teach him for a few minutes, and guys were working on other things. So, it wasn't like a cookie cutter program. He could see the uniqueness in each guy and try to bring that out of them. So that was probably one of the best decisions I made as far as wrestling schools, was to go to Al's. It was a perfect fit for me.
Now in that class, now you said there's about 6 guys or so.
Yeah.
Did everyone make it all the way through the training, or was there any notables that came out of that class along with you?
Yeah, there was a few. Of course, Blue Meanie. Blue Meanie
Oh,
was
he
in my
trained with
class.
you. Oh, he was in your class.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, he had. I think he arrived there a month or two prior to me arriving. So he was already a little bit ahead, and so he was also a good mentor because he had already kind of went through the basics and everything. So Meanie was there. Tex Monroe, another Michigander, good
Oh,
friend
wow.
of mine.
Okay.
He was in the class. Yeah. Rick Matrix.
Wow,
Rick,
already a good group right there. Wow.
Yeah, it's a pretty crazy group. So those guys were in there. Nixon would come down. Steve Nixon on occasion come down and help out with some stuff. Then there was a few guys from Canada, from Chatham, Ontario, that would come down. Sean Brown, who he was in and out of the business a little while, and then he ran some shows in Ontario. Danger Boy, his little brother, who went under a mask and did like a lucha style. There was a bunch of guys, but those were the notable guys. And there was also a famous supermodel from the 80s. Her cousin was there. I think it was Rachel Hunter was the model's name.
Oh, wow.
And Raywin Hunter, her cousin, had been in our class, and she was from New Zealand, and I believe she made it through, but took off for either Japan or she went back home to wrestle locally after about 4 months. So it was a pretty packed class with guys that would do something or at least be somewhat notable. In the area.
That definitely is. I mean, you said, Meanie, and then you said Matrix and Tex. I mean, those were, especially Matrix and Tex were, mainstays in the Midwest and the Michigan area, especially during that area as well. So, I mean, that was just kind of like, wow, okay, there's one name, and then you just named off a couple more. Wow. That's a really
and I don't
good
know if a lot of
right
people
there.
know about this, but I know Matrix also had a hand in training Luke Harper, who passed away.
Really?
I didn't know if you knew that. Yeah.
No,
yeah,
I did not.
He was one of the first guys to get his hands on John and broke him in a little bit. And I think they had somewhat of a falling out. And I know that it's not really a lot of public knowledge. And I think that some people just didn't like Rick Matrix, so it doesn't really get talked about a lot. But little known fun fact, only exclusively here.
I was going to say that would have had to have been when. Because I know Matrix was up in New York, the New York area.
Yeah,
stuff,
Rochester,
so
New York.
It has to be up there.
Where Luke Harper's from.
Okay. That definitely makes sense. Now, going on from your training, your first match. Now, one, do you remember? Two, how did that come about that you were going to have your first match? Was it discussed before? Were you at a show and doing the usual setup, tear down, and then said, hey, you're ready for a match?
Yeah, no, it was actually in the weeks leading up. We had went, Al had taken all the guys down to a wrestling boot and clothes manufacturer, this little mom and pop, somewhere in the middle of Ohio. And it was an elderly woman and her husband that made gear for wrestlers. They made the boots, they made all kinds of outfits. And it was this little hole in the wall. And I remember going in there and they were making stuff for Bret Hart. They had stuff for Shawn Michaels hung up. And we're like, marking out, like, you make their stuff. And they're like, yeah, we do some big names and, a lot of like local guys. So we had gear made and Al had us practicing, doing promos and, getting comfortable in our gear, practicing in it. And then Al called me in his office one day and he goes, we got a show here at the gym in a couple weeks and I want you to work with a guy, Maniac Mark Bryant, who played kind of a psychopath. I don't know how much he worked in this area, if you know the name, but big beard, long crazy hair, and he was supposed to be an escaped lunatic. And basically it was like a TV squash. That's what it seemed, what it looked like. So I wasn't quite ready for a match. And Mark Bryant had been a little bit more polished, so we did about a 3-minute match, and he put me out with a sleeper. And I think I got one little comeback in there, and I was terrified to even take anything in the match. But he just basically bumped me, and I sold. And and that was that. So I got that one under my belt, and then from there, it was a week or two later, we wrestled in Dayton. We did the same match with a little more. I got a little bit more in that. But yeah, once I got that first one in, I was off to the races, man. I knew I'd found something I really enjoyed doing, and it's something that felt natural to me.
Mm-hmm. Now, I was going to say, obviously, your nerves of steel going into that. Like you said, you didn't want to really take anything in that first match.
Oh yeah, I was terrified. I thought, what if I mess up? What if he suplexes me and my pants, my trunks come off and I'm naked? I mean, there was everything going through your mind. It was really a fear of the unknown. And, but what happened was I realized something, that the nerves, pre-match nerves never go away. And the only thing you can do is to channel those butterflies and nerves into good nervous energy, where you tell yourself, okay, I'm sweating, my heart's racing, I'm going crazy. Now I know I'm ready, and channel that energy, out in the ring so that you can make the best of it and not let it psych you out or get the best of you. And then realizing that there's going to be a botch. At some point, you're going to botch. You're going to screw up something, but the thing that you need to do is just keep going.
Don't sit and dwell on it and make it as obvious as it may. It's obvious to you, but it may not be obvious to the fans. So just keep, like you say, keep on going, because the more that you sit there and kind of acknowledge it, it kind of ruins the vision and the story inside the ring.
Exactly. Where, Al would explain to us, he goes, you messed up. He goes, you'll think of 5 things that happened in the match that wasn't something that was supposed to happen, or you didn't execute it right. And when you go back and watch the footage, you're going to see that it wasn't as bad as you thought it was, generally, although there are those moments. So
yeah, and that's the bad thing too, is that a lot of times when that botch it, you basically poison your mind that you messed up, and then a lot of the guys sit there and think, what's next? What's going to go wrong next? And then it kind of takes away the chemistry of the match, because you're because there's some matches that you'll notice where there'll be one little screw up and then all of a sudden it just starts falling off at the hinges, because you can tell that they're not concentrating on keeping that chemistry alive. They're more worried about what's going to happen next, what's going to be messed up next.
Absolutely. I think it's a rookie. It's a problem for anybody that's new and green, is trying to stay with what the idea of what they wanted the match to be, and forgetting about the crowd and their reactions. And sometimes it's okay to go off the cuff, communicate, to your partner, your opponent in the ring, okay, let's go here. They're really reacting to me lighting you up with these chops. Let's take it around the ring. And, playing to the crowd instead of, there's the script. We just got to do this match and it's going to look wonderful. And, people are sitting on their thumbs. And that's one thing that, I know I'm getting ahead of myself, but when I came back and did a little run in 2016, I'd been out of the ring 16, 17 years. And I worked for about 2.5 years. I had so much fun because I was relaxed and I played to the crowd. I felt like I really wish that I had done this in the 90s. I would have had a lot more fun. And the matches were fine. And the biggest thing, like I said, at that point, I wasn't looking to go anywhere to get a contract out of it. I was just looking to have some fun and get some digital footage instead of the grainy VHS stuff that I have of my matches now. So, yeah, that's one thing that a lot of the guys, I know the business changes and evolves and everything, but to learn how to work, and I'm sure that I've had a lot of conversations with him, Nate Matson, that, you just got to get in there and learn how to work. And that just takes time. It's a numbers game. It's matches, get as many matches in as you can, and you learn how to work that way.
Now, when you finally started getting out there in the ring and stuff, because of what time it was that you were out there wrestling, it was right there in the middle of the 90s, and of course there was no internet. There was really not much of a way of advertising yourself, except for the old VHS and the resumes. How did you have an issue of getting your name out there to kind of spread your wings, so to speak, with the promotions that were running around?
That's a really good question, because, breaking into 94, wrestling was definitely in a recession, and, it was very cartoony in WWF. Ratings were not great. Money on the road wasn't that great, but there was that emerging ECW and this hardcore style that was, the tape traders are going crazy for, this underground thing going on in Philadelphia. And I was fortunate enough that Sabu, being from Lansing, and his sidekick there, Pee Wee Moore, who was a referee in ECW and then in Michigan as well, took me under their wing as far as when Sabu ran shows in 95, I believe it was. I was working with them. Like, I'd go pick up Sabu in Lansing, bring him to the show, or hey, can you go to the airport and pick up Tommy Dreamer, Taz, and Paul Heyman, or Nishimura, who was over working in ECW from New Japan. So, what happened was, by association with these guys and tape trading going crazy, I'd be on these shows. So I wasn't doing anything special in these matches. I was still very green, less than a year in the business. So I'm bumping around like crazy, doing, getting thrown into chairs through tables. If Sabu ran in on a match on me, might put me through a table or something. So I started to get recognized that way with the tape trading. So I didn't have to do too much in that way to try to promote yet. And there was also an opportunity that came up to go work in Chicago for, if you remember, a company called AWF. It was American Wrestling Federation.
Yes.
And it was, they had a bunch of money. Yeah, they had a ton of TV. And what their business plan was to bring in every unsigned star. They had a paid audience. So they had fans and a producer out there that told them to boo or to cheer. So the crowd popped just like they wanted them to pop, and they needed extra guys, and they had asked
so they were actually guiding the fans on what to do.
Absolutely.
Really?
Their business plan, Sean, was to tape about 6 months of TV and put it out there and generate interest that way, and then they'd make their money back going on the road and doing house shows. That was their plan.
So they really did the old TV studio wrestling with the
they sure did.
Wow.
They did it in the studio next door to Oprah's studio. So Oprah was next door, we were right there, and they had guys like Sid Vicious was there, and he was the way I got in as well. This is another interesting side note. I don't think I've shared on any public, but again, getting the exclusives today, was I had, when I went to do those AWF tapings, Sabu had told myself and Pee Wee, he goes, why don't you guys go to Chicago and try to get on this taping, because there's a money mark. They're paying a lot of money. Like, you could do some job matches for like $500 a shot, and they want you to work like 3 times in a day, and they want you for a week. So you're going to make a boatload of money when you're making, $10 to $25 on the indies for a match. If you got paid at all, you might get a hot dog and a handshake. So $500 for a job against, a legend, it's like, well, you need money. You're starving right now. So we went, so we didn't know that we weren't booked. We just, we thought maybe Sabu knew somebody that, so we decided to work the office, which was Terry Taylor and Tito Santana. They were the bookers. So we walked in with our gear, and Tito's like, what do you need, brother? And I'm like, I said, yeah. I said, you need any extra help, or, need guys for the show? And he's like, how long you been working? And I had 2 matches. I said, I've been working 4 years. He's like, oh, okay, brother. Yeah. He goes, well, we'll do one with Hercules. We'll see how it goes. And, maybe we'll keep you around for the week. And I'm like, okay. And Pee Wee's like, that worked? I said, apparently. So I don't think Pee Wee worked. I think he just hung out because they had their referees. They'd Billy Silverman and and their other guys. So Pee Wee was just along for the ride, having fun. So I worked Hercules that day, and we went over our stuff and everything, and we were out there, and he busted my face open with a lariat just right to the face. And, being trained with Al and, being mentored by Sabu and, more of an old school way, I just went with it. And at the end of the match, after he obliterated me, I just went up to him, blood run down my face, shook his hand. Thanks, brother. He goes, "You're a tough kid." He goes back, talks to Tito. They're like, "Yep, he's a good kid." So I was a made man. So I did jobs the rest of the week. Got my ass handed to me by Nails. Went to call the match with him, and he looked at me and he goes, "Basically, I'm just going to kick the shit out of you." Okay. And that's what he did. He's a wonderful man. And he had just gotten fired from WWF after choking Vince McMahon in his office. And so he was a gem. Worked Johnny Gunn at that taping as well. We had a good match. But so basically, short story long is that gave me a lot of exposure, because for the next year they had bought all this syndication, and that was on in the local market just about every night on local television. So it was being shown all over the country, and basically, here I am now. By the time it's being shown, I've grown my hair out, I've gotten my body more in shape, and I was doing some more high flying stuff. People are like, "Holy crap." Okay. So my name was starting to stick a little bit that way. So, it was little things like that. Just
it was basically that you're like they always say, right place, right time. Because you were just getting into it, and you had free advertising with the tape trading with Sabu's NWA Sabu promotion, and then with the AWF. You didn't have to really sit there and send out your information, because they had it right there. All they had to do was contact Sabu or contact AWF to find out where's this guy. How do I get a hold of him?
That's the whole thing. And I mean, it's hard to imagine now if you're a younger fan, but tape trading and stuff was huge. Mm-hmm. And so that also, all of that not only helped me with getting name recognition and getting booked around the country, but I also decided, I need to somehow, merchandise or have, gimmicks or something. So I opened a P.O. box, and I wrote up 10 things you must know to be a pro wrestler. So it was basically going to be marketed, to guys that I was just a year or two ago. And the internet was it was a baby then, but I had set up an Angel Fire account.
Yeah, that's what everybody did back then.
Yeah, and so it was interesting. I was probably getting about 20 to 30 pieces of fan mail a week in my P.O. box. And one of the more notable ones was, and I just found the letter about, a few weeks ago, was a young kid named Lance. And he had just graduated high school. He said he had seen my tapes and wanted to go to wrestling school. And he was going to be in Texas and didn't know if he should come up to Lima, Ohio, or where he should go. Well, Shawn Michaels had just opened his wrestling academy.
Yeah, the TWA school down there.
Yeah, and I said, it makes no sense for you to travel all the way up here. You could probably go to wrestling school and be home every night. I think we figured out the logistics of the distance from his house. So I wrote him back, and I said, you should really, go there and, talk to Shawn Michaels and et cetera. Well, he ended up going to Michaels' school. Around the same time, Daniel Bryan also went to Shawn Michaels' school, and he ended up being Lance Cade, who is no longer with us. Yeah, so Lance Cade was Lance McNaught, a high school kid that wrote me a letter looking for direction. And I'm actually trying to get in touch with his family to see if they have any interest in the correspondence and the letters that we had back and forth. That might mean something.
Could you imagine if I mean, just think about if he had not, if you had not had that correspondence with him, just the trajectory of what road that's odd and cool at the same time. It's just wow.
it's really bizarre to think about that. But, you know, so he had his run, and at that time when he had his run, I wasn't following the product as closely, because when I left wrestling in 2000, I started a personal training career, did some stuff with MTV, etc. But later on, I fell back in love with wrestling around 2013 when the Daniel Bryan and the Yes movement, and I was like, what the hell is this? And I started watching wrestling again. But then that's when I found out that Lance Cade was Lance McNaught, that same kid. I was blown away by that. So, yeah, it's a small world, man.
Wow. Wow. Now, you had brought up right when we went to start this about how you got your name. Now, I know back in the older days, some trainers, they would give you a name. Now how is it that you got your name, Jimi V? Is it that same aspect, or?
No, you know what? With Al at the time, he really would give you his thoughts if you were trying to think of a name. It's nothing he really talked about, you know, until if and when you needed a name. For instance, when I needed to work with, you know, Mark Bryan my first time, I had already had the name in mind. But the way that came about was it was just a day in between the training sessions, and we were watching some tapes from Japan and just sitting around in the gym, and a commercial came on when we were flipping channels, and it was Jim Valvano's Jimi V Foundation for cancer. And in the commercial, they're like, "Don't give up, don't ever give up." And Al and Brian Blumini looked over at me and go, "Jimi V Foundation, you're Jimi V. Don't give up. You're an underdog baby face who's going to get pummeled but maybe get a comeback." And they're like, "And it's your name." So they started to tease me because I thought, well, we could do Jimi V, but I could be Jimmy Valvano, or Vostino rather. And they go, "Where did you get Vostino?" And I said, "Well, you guys are always teasing me and ribbing me, calling me Bud Bundy, because I looked a little bit like Bud Bundy from Married with Children." So he was David Faustino. So I said, well, I can't remember if it was Meanie or myself that went, "Oh, Vostino, I'm Jimmy Vostino." And then Al talked me into Jimi V. He goes, "Just go with Jimi V, that's fine." And years later, Rob Van Dam would give me some crap in a locker room where I introduced myself. "I am Jimi V." He goes, "I used to be Robbie V. You must be a mark for me."
Oh, and wow.
I said, no, but nice to meet you. So, but yeah, true story.
Wow. Now, because of, like we said, with the being around, you got Pee Wee and also with Sabu working his promotion in Michigan. Is that also where it also kind of helped you out by getting work at the local promotions in Michigan as well, because of the connection with Sabu? Or
I would say that helped a little bit. It was also a combination of Al Snow's connections. I never worked for Gary Warnchek, who ran Midwest promotion, but like he was Al had tagged with Mike Kelly. Mike Kelly had a promotion. There was I think the end with Sabu. No, there weren't that many. You're right. Malcolm Sr. was running, and I believe my in with Malcolm just came word of mouth. And I worked for Malcolm, and he was always amazing. He was always amazing, always took care of the talent, and, you know, was very, very giving with advice and opportunity as well. But it just kind of, it's interesting because there's always a guy in the locker room. And, you know, it used to be etiquette. You go in the locker room and shake everybody's hand. And I think that went away a while ago. You know, you'd give a soft worker's handshake. It was to give a first impression of how you work. If you were stiff, if you shook a man shakes a man's hand, he really digs in there. It's like in wrestling, it was the softest, limpest thing. The softest handshake you could give was a way to tell the other worker that you'll be light with him. So you just gave the lightest handshake. And sure enough, you're in a locker room with guys for 4, 5, 6 hours. You have small talk and, connections are made, and, they're looking for a guy, or there's a promoter in the back, and he's like, hey, I saw your match, and, gives you opportunity. So it's always an interesting, it's not like a one way to just like get booked or to get your name out there. Usually, at least for me, it wasn't. I never had problems getting booked. I worked for Shark Boy out in Pennsylvania. There was, guys out on the East Coast, Jim Kettner, Blaine DeSantis, ECWA, PCW, where Reckless Youth opened that door, and a bunch of guys. So it was always just an interesting, just unique circumstance where some guy saw a tape, or some guy, you worked a tag match and this guy had an in here. And it just, I was very fortunate that I didn't have to really hustle, because at that time too, like I said, wrestling was kind of in a down period. And it's like, why would you go in? It's like jumping in the stock market when it crashes. It's like, this doesn't make sense to get into the business, but Al had explained to us, wrestling goes in cycles. It'll get hot again. Sure as hell, like 96, 97, the rocket ship was there, Attitude Era, and then all of a sudden, everyone was running packed houses, so there was plenty of work. By the time I, broken my teeth and, was halfway decent in the ring.
Yeah, you came up and right during that resurgence, because you got to think, if you look at the people that were wearing wrestling shirts in like 94, 95, you didn't see that many, but come 95, 96, and then you got the NWO, and then you got, the Attitude Era coming in 97, all of a sudden you saw shirts everywhere you went. So it just showed the resurgence of wrestling. And then luckily the independents, especially here in Michigan, started picking up on that. And, then because you got to think too, with the guys that were in the WWF and ECW were coming out of Detroit, and you could see them, monthly in a local ring. You had Rhino, you had Joey Legend, you had, the whole Thug Life there with Edge and Christian. You had Big Daddy Kane, part of that group as well. You had all this talent that was local, and then all of a sudden they were all going off the TV. So of course, especially in Malcolm's promotion, when all these guys signed and went away, because I know Joe and Rhino went off to I think it was Germany. Then they showed up in ECW. They had spots to fill, and so that was the perfect time right during that resurgence where they had 5 spots to fill, and what better not time to get into the business and take those spots.
Yeah, it was a really it was a stroke of luck. Like lightning just struck, and guys that were around our age at the time, early 20s, they had a need for more talent because they were continuing to expand the TV product. There were more guys running shows, and anybody that had a halfway decent look and kept their nose clean, so to speak, and didn't make enemies was going to get, you were going to get work. And it was just really blowing up, where wrestlers just became like rock stars. Like you said, it was the cover TV guide. Everywhere you went, there were wrestling shirts or South Park shirts. People were wearing that, an Austin shirt every 2 feet. It was really amazing.
Yeah, it was. And I will tell you, that when I sit there and think about it too, like when you said in the beginning about your presence in how you described yourself as like the Rock, you did have that I guess you say charisma when you would come out there into the ring. You had the young Rock at that time as well. So
yeah.
That description does fit very well. Just think of a little bit shorter.
A lot shorter.
well, yeah, but the charisma. But there's numerous matches I watched you in, and considering that some of the things that you and the guys were able to do inside, especially in that Hot Rocks bar, where there's no roof, you have no ceiling to do anything, And for you guys, I mean, the likes of you and Steve Nixon and APOC and stuff, you guys were able to do everything, and still make
Yeah.
it with not much room and not much space, head space. You guys were still able to put on those matches that people wanted to see. And to me, it still amazes me to this day when I see guys now. They're like, we can't do this or that. It's like you guys don't even know what they used to do, and they had
Yeah.
less space back in the day.
Exactly. It was we had a lot more challenges, but it also made it fun for those that were opportunists or liked a challenge. You just never knew what you were walking into when you did an indie show. You just worked with what you had, and one of the biggest things, and I think this gets lost on maybe upcoming guys at like the Performance Center, or guys that have to stick to a tight script, and when they get thrown off it, they're completely lost. Is Al always taught us in school was to learn to react, that things are going to go wrong, and you got to react to the environment you're in. And the faster you can react, and the better the match is going to be, or the better the circumstance is going to be. You just take everything was a glass half full. Like, don't, piss and moan, make the best of whatever happens. Like, I don't know if you've seen that famous clip of the Outlaws and going to the ring for a TV match. The bat in the corner, and that's how. I remember Al had told the story, and in the gym, and I was cracking up, and I was like, "Come on, man, you're putting this on. That didn't happen." He pulls up the video, and I'm like, "Holy crap, this is hilarious!" And he goes, "That's it's live TV. We're live, Al." It's like you just gotta go with what you got, and it's like, so learning that, it's like, okay, I've worked with broken ribs.
What's even funnier is that I have that on DVD, I have that on VHS, and every time I watch it, it's not just Dave and there's reaction. It's Huck's reaction.
Yeah.
Huck's reaction cracks me up because he just sits there. He's like, "What?" He's trying to keep a straight face without dying laughing, because you can just see it in that grin of a smile that he's got. He's just trying not to die, because he's just like, "What am I supposed to do?" And he's like, "I guess I'll just do this and wrap it around." I've heard the story. I don't know how. I've talked to Dave so many times that every time he tells the story, I just love his hearing it and just the reaction, because it's like you said, it was a spontaneous incident. It was on live TV, and there's video of it, which is even better, because it's not like one of those stories.
First match of a live show.
Yep.
So funny.
That's about as good as when I was doing ring announcing for Section 8. It was the first match of the night, and Chuck Wagon broke the middle rope. First match.
Oh man!
Right there at Hot Rod. He went. I mean, he tried to do something off his slam or whatever off the second rope, and he got in there and went to do one bounce, and it snapped. And like, well, there's the rest of the show. I mean, that was the opening. That was the same thing. Opening match of the show. Somebody's got video of it, but I remember sitting there and I'm like, well, this is great. Well, I mean, stuff like that happens, and like you said, you got to learn to react, but you also got to learn to kind of, do your best on not really sitting there and dwelling on it. But yeah, that right there is definitely something that'll always be remembered. I know it's constantly talked about. I mean, I think it's like a yearly thing online right now. Whenever that video pops up in somebody's memory, they have to share it, and then we all relive the story and all get to re-laugh about it every time.
That's like the Midwest version of the Shockmaster.
Yeah, you know what? That's
going
true.
Through the
That's
wall.
Very true.
It's our version. It's really funny, and I think that when things happen, it's like, I think you just got to think, okay, do I go to comedy? Do we go to chain wrestling? Do we take it, do we take it to the stands and brawl? Like, what do you do? But you got to do something. And, I think the guy that learns to think on his feet and, listen to the refs, especially I remember early on, I'd be working for Malcolm, and Huck would be our ref, and he would give us a little direction with stuff. It's like, hey, you might want to take it outside or do this, or keep going, don't go home yet. And he was reading the crowd, and somebody who had an outside eye and could understand the match. Maybe he's not in the frame, so he can see the picture. He's on the outside taking it in. And, just being humble enough, I think, to listen to the veterans, if they have some feedback for you, not taking it personally, but take it as constructive criticism to be better. Because if the guy doesn't give a shit, he's not going to tell you, but if a guy is willing to sit down and talk to you, that's something I noticed when I came back. Nate Matson was amazing at, is being like the locker room general and really commanding respect and, getting guys on board. And, there's a certain way you act. And, yeah, you guys are doing it a little differently, but there's still some, etiquette, and there's this and that. But, good times.
Mm-hmm. Now, well, you were speaking about ICW. How was it to work for Malcolm? And, and just everyone there in working for Midwest Championship Wrestling, ICW. Yeah,
it was amazing because I was there right towards the tail end of Midwest when they decided to go insane, and we went to Detroit into that
Palladium,
kind of renegade. Even before that, there was they went downtown Detroit into a closed down boxing gym. I don't know if you were aware of that or if you'd seen the tapes of that. And it was a rustic, hardcore, dangerous feeling where they brought in light trusts. And I think they needed a generator and all of this because they were basically running this, without, the city's acknowledgement. It was like this renegade type show. It was really like pretty special because it had an ECW feel, but with a little twist on it. And guys like the Headbangers came in. Of course, Edge and Christian, were a part of Midwest and came in. There was a bunch of guys that came in and worked for Malcolm. I remember one night I just brought my gear and went to watch the show. Malcolm hadn't booked me for whatever reason, and there was never bad blood when a guy booked a show and he didn't use you. It was just like, there's only so many spots on the card, and this is what they're going to do tonight. So I went to the show, and he goes, we had a guy sick or somebody no-showed. Do you want to work with this guy, Bull Payne? So, yeah, no problem. So this guy, Bull Payne, who was, I think, in Ian Rotten's Kentucky promotion, IWA, possibly. And but he was this big, hardcore guy, right? And so, we talked in the back, blah, blah, blah. We went out there. He DDT'd me on the floor, split my head wide open. It sounded like a bowling ball, like hitting the ground. And so my head was split open, blood everywhere. Still worked the rest of the match. Had a crazy match with him. Threw me in the chairs. Finished me off with this gruesome-looking top rope DDT where my feet were hanging on the top rope, and he just dropped me on my head. Took care of me on that. The only thing was the shot to the head on the DDT. I took it a little tough. He realized he didn't quite protect me on that. So I get to the back, and Malcolm was so beside himself. He was so pissed, and I said, no, it was my fault. It's not Bull Payne's fault. And the Headbangers came over. This is my Headbangers story. He goes, oh, brother, you need to get some hydrogen peroxide on that, and we'll get some super glue and take care of that. I said, okay. So they open, one of them opens the bag and pours it on my head, and the other guy puts the super glue in. I was like, thanks, brother. And they just look at me like as if your waiter realized you didn't give him a tip. And I said, what? I said, what? And he goes, that bottle of hydrogen peroxide is 97 cents. And I went, oh, okay. And then I thought about it, and I was like, whatever. And I just kind of I no-sold them. I was like, oh, okay, whatever. And I guess they held that grudge. They'd see me just under their breath, this for $1. And this was after they got signed. And when I went for my tryouts, they're sitting there playing cards and just looking at me like, brother, over $1 here. Yeah. Here's your dollar. Holy. So, but yeah, they were interesting guys, to say the least.
Yeah,
But they
they're
did
actually
put me back together.
Yeah. Oh.
You were saying they're
That,
actually.
yeah, they actually they're actually there's a promotion here in Florida that they're actually the tag team champions right now.
Oh, really?
Yes. Yep,
Still working.
in Satellite Beach. Yep, they're still working. They're
Oh,
still
nice.
they're still active down here. Yeah, they're the tag champions down here, which I haven't gotten the chance to go because of everything that's been going on. But yeah, they're
Yeah,
still the
sure.
it's impressive.
That's great. Yeah, that's
Um,
great.
now, 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 when we were you had talked about working for NWA Sabu. How was it? I mean, how was it to work for him? I mean, obviously he had, he had the influence from back in the day from the Sheik and whatnot, and he opened his own promotion. Do you even know why it was that he had opened his own promotion? And then when you started working for him?
I think that Sabu had always wanted to recreate that 60s Sheik territory where, the Sheik ran Kobo and it was all like, strict territories. You had Bruiser in Indianapolis, and then I think you had the Pafos in Florida and the Ganyas in Minnesota and all that. And I think that he wanted to basically be, the big fish in a little pond, and thought it could draw money. Sabu was very, very old school and was always in gimmick, so he didn't really say too much. And but that, I know that's one of the things that was the vision, was to recreate that and try to grow to eventually, do like local arenas and things like that. So, he of course would bring in some guys from ECW, and, that would be a drawing point. But, basically it was the Sabu show, once or twice on the show, and he was over like crazy. So it wasn't like, he was booking himself as the top guy and it wasn't well received. He was a very quickly rising star who, he said later in some interviews, he was basically his worst enemy as well, because, there were times where he could have made a lot of money, but just didn't want to give up creative freedom. And, he wanted to do it his way. And I thought his way was great. I loved the gimmick and everything he did. And he was way ahead of his time with some of the stuff he did. But he never got those big payouts, where he would really could have drawn a lot of money. But, that was, it was a lot of fun working for him, where he ran the locker room very old school, and you knew why you were there, what you were doing. A lot of things he used Pee Wee to basically, communicate stuff, and then he'd be taking care of his stuff with whatever talent he was working with that night. Like, my first night working for Sabu, funny side story involving Chris Benoit. He brought Benoit in to work with him, and Benoit had not been on the national stage yet. He was doing Wild Pegasus and New Japan, and he may have worked Mexico as well, I'm not sure. But I knew who Benoit was because that's all we did was watch tapes in wrestling school. So I was like marking out. I was like, this guy's unbelievable. And this was about a year or two before he was in WCW. But so he's in the back, and I had done a match. Well, if you can call it a match, it was they booked me. I was still really green, to wrestle Otis Apollo from Canada, from Scott D'Amore's, one of Scott D'Amore's boys. And and so they're like, hey, you think you can sell some tickets to your family and get some people in there for the match? And I was like, oh yeah, of course. So I probably sold 50 tickets for them, and so they said, okay, here's what you're gonna do. You're gonna go in the ring. Sabu's gonna come out before the bell rings, and he's gonna put you through the table. I was like, okay, that's my night. But I was like, I idolized Sabu. I thought he was amazing. So that was cool. And so I'm in the back and, selling the neck and everything after going through the table. And, time passes so fast. You have so much adrenaline after, doing anything in the ring or near it. So Benoit comes up to me, introduced himself real professional. He's like, hey, kid. I'm like, yeah. He goes, Chris Benoit. I said, it's an honor, Jimi V. And he's like, got any ring tape? Yeah, I've got a fresh roll right here. He takes the tape, puts it on one wrist, starts to turn and roll it around his wrist as he's looking me in the eye the whole time with this strange, icy stare. Once the roll was about half empty, he broke off the tape, put it on the other wrist, still not breaking eye contact with me, and finished the other roll. And he goes, thanks, and drops the empty roll on the floor and walks out.
What the hell?
Yeah, it's very strange. But, you know, yeah. But then Benoit came down when he was in town for that show with Sabu. You know, Al Snow was on the card as well. So Snow had two shows in Lima that same weekend. So Benoit came down to Body Slammers and worked with Al a couple times and had some good matches there at the Body Slammers gym. But yeah, Benoit was an intimidating figure, but very respectful. You could tell he was old school and one hell of a worker.
Now, when Snow, because I think Snow ran a promotion in Taylor a few times, didn't he? It was with an A. I don't have it on paper here. I thought
His promotion.
Either he ran a promotion or he was a part of one that did a couple shows in Taylor. Maybe it was somebody else, but I know he was on every card. I'm aware of that. There's shows that were in Taylor in 90, I think it was 95, 96, because I know Skull was on a couple shows.
Skull Dance was on there, Al. That may have been for, who could that have been? I want to say it was it Mike Kelly? No, Kelly ran Westland.
Yeah, he ran Westland. It was there's a couple shows that were in Taylor. I want to say it was like 95 or 96, something like that. It was a promotion. It started with an A, and I completely blanked. I had it in my mind, and I would say it right when I went to say it, I completely lost track of what it was.
Yeah, you know, I don't remember. There were so many shows then, like you said. I don't remember anything about. I just remember that Sabu had ran NWA in Taylor once or twice. It may have been that show, but I'm not sure. And I know Paul Heyman came in for those shows as well, at least a couple.
I think and NSWA had a show, I think, in Taylor. If not in Taylor, they had. I know they had at least one show. I still remember. I think they had it at the Wayne Ford Civic League or something like that in Westland at least once.
Yes. Yeah, it's funny. I hadn't thought about NSWA in a long time. Yeah, I think that's where I worked Reckless Youth, and that may have been. For some reason, I thought it was Kelly's show, but I think it was. It was Curtis's show. Yeah. So yeah, NSWA they ran. I think I was their light heavyweight champion for a little while. But yeah, that was always a good show to work on too.
Yeah, that was I mean, that promotion it looked like, I mean, they had a lot going for them, and then they just kind of filtered out, and then Curtis decided to start that Hellfire Wrestling, and then we saw that vision, and then obviously his passing, that we didn't get to see the full out of what he was trying to do with that.
Yeah, he was such a good guy and very smart, good wrestling mind, and I think it just there was a lot of potential there we didn't see realized. It's too bad. I remember working the Hellfire stuff with Ace Steele, who's now a performance center trainer, I believe, and really good worker. And that and ICP was all on that. Where I remember. I believe it was 99. You could probably correct me if I'm wrong. And there wasn't a lot of guys that were willing to work for ICP at the time because, they're just backyard guys. What are they doing? You shouldn't do this show. And, and so ICP wanted me on the show because they said, well, you're in the business. It'll legitimize the show. And I remember having a really good match with Ace Steele, and the fans were throwing Faygo bottles, money, all kinds of stuff at us, and it was just a super hot crowd. I went to take a superplex from the top rope, and they had these tiki torches in the corner, And
Yeah.
I slightly got burned from the tiki torch before Ace suplexed me back into the ring and put the fire out. So, yeah, fond memories. But then they went on with the Juggalo shows and everything. And they continued that for a while. I think just about everyone and their mother worked eventually for them. But
Mm-hmm. The promotion that I was sitting there, I was just looking at as you were talking. It was actually right around the time that you had trained. I was thinking that it was All American Pro Wrestling that did a couple shows in Taylor. That's what I was thinking about. I got confused.
yeah, that sounds
I didn't
familiar.
realize when the
Okay.
year was.
Yeah. I
Yeah,
think
because
from concussions, it's funny. I don't know like how many guys you've talked to and doing, these interviews, but guys have this, I don't know if you ever listened to, I'm not trying to plug anybody, but Keeping It 100 Conan's show, but they talk about how workers, disco is on their Disco Inferno, et cetera. And they talk about how there can be, what's interesting about over the years in the business is you'll have concussions and you won't remember things. Like there's matches I've watched recently. I found like my little treasure chest of tapes and I was like, I do not have any recollection of this match. And then one thing will happen in that match I'll watch on tape and it'll bring everything back very vividly. And then it's gone. Then I don't remember it again. And it's strange. And I thought it was just me, but I guess there's a lot of guys in the business that as the years go on, they just have these weird lapses where they remember everything briefly and then it's gone again.
Yeah, and speaking of tapes, I mean, I literally have a giant tote of 150 VHS tapes, and numerous times on on Facebook and stuff, I was doing those live vault videos, and
Those are great.
people watching it. People were watching. They're like, I don't remember this match. Like you're saying, they don't remember it. I mean, obviously they were. Either from, like you said, the same thing with the memory, or just who knows what was going on at that time, or what they were going through at that time, so they don't remember it. And that right there is one of those keys where it's like, I don't remember this match. Okay, now then but also they'll watch them like, okay, now I remember this, or they remember parts of it, but they, I worked this guy, I don't remember what happened. Okay, now I know what happened. Kind of adds, fills in some of those blanks that they have in their mind.
Exactly. And I mean, guys have their own reasons, I think, for not remembering stuff. But what's interesting is I can't blame drugs or alcohol or anything, because I was, completely straight edge. Maybe a little creatine and protein powder in my system, but it wasn't like I was, inebriated or pilled up or anything, and not remembering stuff. It's just gone. And then, again, I'll look at something or a match or a situation will come up in someone else's match and it'll be so vivid and I'll remember it all. And then it's gone again. It's very strange. And I've had some scans to see if there's any damage from concussions, and to my surprise, there's not. So
it's just the thing of getting old, basically, is what it is. It's you get one new memory that pushes an old one out, and then it's it kind of sits there in the gray area. If just in case you run into something there. Now you had spoken, you had spoken about when with the issue you had with the headbangers, that whole thing with the over $1, and then you saw them in the WWF. How did that transpire to that you had that I'm guessing a tryout with the WWF?
Yeah, what happened was it was 97, and it was funny because I like I told you, when I graduated high school, I had no intentions of going to college. I didn't know what I wanted to do besides wrestle. I knew I wanted to be a wrestler, and that was it. That's all I wanted to do, and I didn't have a backup plan. But what I started to notice after a couple of years in the business was I really enjoyed like the physical preparation of what you needed to do to be in good shape, and the bodybuilding side of it. Even though I wasn't really a muscle guy, but I was in shape. And I realized I enjoyed the working out, and I started to think, okay, I need a backup plan here, because my body, I've broken my ribs a few times, concussions already, fluid drained from the knee, broken ankles, blah, blah. And I'm like, okay, maybe I should consider going back to school and possibly be a physical therapist or a trainer or something. So now I'm, I always still, loved wrestling at that point, but I started to think about life after wrestling. And I was like, this is probably this local stuff, a little bit of, travel, to a couple different regions. I've done enough. It's fine. I can live with, I never thought I'm going to be the WWF champion or whatever.
That was only a couple of years. You'd only been in the business a couple of years at that time too.
Exactly.
This is 97. You'd only been in there, roughly 3 years.
Yeah, it wasn't even 3 years yet. And then I remember that someone had given me a message that I got a call from Gerald Briscoe. And I was like, really? I said, yeah, here's the number. He wants to know if you can be in Indiana in 2 weeks for a tryout. And, now I'm in school and, taking my core classes and enjoying that, during the weekdays and then wrestling on the weekends. And I'm like, I called Joe Briscoe back and he's like, yeah, we heard about you. And, we'd like to give you a tryout at Ball State University. We've got a Raw taping. And I thought about how my reaction was strange even to me because, if you had told me that in 94, I would have been, on pins and needles or excited, about the tryout. But I just thought, okay, you know what? It's there's no reason to be nervous because I'm planning for life after wrestling anyways. And if I bomb, I bomb. I don't really care, but it'll be nice to say I did that. So they had booked me with another one of Al's trainees, Elvis Elliott. And we had worked a ton of matches. So we knew each other really well, sort of like my matches with Steve Nixon, who's a very underrated worker. And we had gold in the ring. It was so easy. And so I was like, okay. So my parents I told them about it and they were all excited. And they're like, you seem like indifferent. I said, well, I don't want to psych myself out. I do want to, have my best foot forward and just do whatever I can there. And I just don't see, because they hadn't started the light heavyweight division yet. So I didn't realize that was the vision that Vince had. He was trying to compete with Nitro and what they were doing with Mysterio and everything. So they were trying to find their American versions of high flyers, of the Lucha Libre style. So I get there and, I meet, shake hands in the locker room, et cetera. And I meet Patterson, Tony Gurria, and Briscoe, and they're chatting with me. Kid, go out there. We're going to give you about 8 minutes before Raw. It's a dark match. Just do everything you do on the tapes. Do that flip you do. And Too Cold Scorpio worked for them at the time. And I said, I'm a little concerned about doing that move. Scorpio, who was Flash Funk at the time, I said, that's his finisher. And they said, do it. It doesn't matter. It's a dark match. It'll pop the crowd. We want to see it. And I said, okay. So I hadn't ran into Scorpio yet. So we go out, we do our dark match. The ring was like concrete. It was before they went to a softer ring. And it was a bigger ring. I think it was 18 by 18, and I'd always worked in 16s. So here I am in this bigger ring, but our timing and everything was flawless. I hit the 450, popped the crowd. They gave me the win. As soon as I walked through the curtain, Scorpio was right there. Started F-bombing me. And all the boys, this is just outside of Gorilla. So I walk in, there's the monitors, Pritchard, Vince. They're just like, oh, nice match, kid. Huh. And I thanks. And I walk through, and Scorpio's right there, and he is ready to kick my ass. I can't believe you did that, you little mother. Da-da-da-da-da. And he's in my face just spitting. He's irate. And I'm looking to the sides, and I'm seeing Taker, Hunter, all these guys are just watching. And I'm like, oh, my God, what am I going to do? Bret Hart. And I'm like, I'm really sorry. I said, it's no disrespect. And they said, did they say you could do that? And I said, yeah. I said, he goes, who told you? And I told him. And he just kind of looks like dead inside. And he's like, shit. And he just walked away. Don't you ever do that on a show I'm on again. I don't worry about it, whatever. And so Brett and Taker were both really nice. Like, don't pay attention. If the office told you to do it, you just did what you're told. And Hunter said something under his breath, sarcastic at me. But the rest of the guys were kind of quiet about it. They were nice, but I was like, I'm done here. Like that was it, you know. And
well, Flash Funk was not too long after that. I don't even think he even made it out of '97 with the company. So never know.
Yeah, I don't think he did. Extremely talented, and it wasn't even 2-3 years prior to that I was watching him on WCW Saturday Night. I thought he was amazing. I think he was teaming up with Marcus Bagwell, who I'd even watched back in the his Handsome Stranger days in Texas at the Sportatorium. I'd watched all that stuff. So, here I am, half fan, half worker, just trying to see where I fit in this locker room and why I was even there in the first place.
Well, just a year prior, he was over working for Malcolm. He worked a couple shows right there. Probably at the I think I want to say one of them might have been at the American GI down in Detroit.
Yeah,
I think that was one of the places. Yeah, because he worked.
He'd worked Sabu maybe, or maybe Al Snow. I'm not sure who he worked, but I remember shaking his hand a couple times in locker rooms. And then all of a sudden, my life's flashing before my eyes, pun intended. But that was interesting. And I went back a few times where I knew they had interest in using me, but they weren't sure yet, because they were trying out a lot of guys. There were a lot of guys going in for dark matches. Guys that were getting notable indie recognition, and they were just trying to figure out what this cruiserweight or light heavyweight division was going to be exactly. And they had brought me back to work with Taka Michinoku, and it was going to be a dark match for the light heavyweight belt. And they told us to go about 7, and we ended up doing 15 because Mike Chioda, had the earpiece, and they would tell him when to tell us to take it home. And then the interesting thing is about that match is we're in the back, and Victor Quinones was the booker for the match. And Taka at the time, and he may now, but he didn't speak English. So Victor was bilingual and could speak Spanish, or actually multilingual, and some Japanese, etc. So we're going over our match, and he's translating it back and forth with Taka Michinoku. So with that match, I was probably near the peak of my abilities in my physical and my understanding of the business. And we went out there, and they ended up giving us 15 minutes, and he beat me with the Michinoku driver. I missed a 450. I did some dives out of the ring. The crowd was really hot for it. And so we got to the back, and this is funny. I got to backtrack a little bit. That tryout in Muncie where Scorpio was threatening to kill me, a young Rocky Maivia was on the show. And he came up to me after the match, and he goes, "Brother, because you were over like Rover out there. How do you do that?" And he goes, "Man, I just get booed like crazy." And I was like, "Oh my God!" I said, "You're third generation. You're like a giant." I said, "They'll find something that's going to work for you." And he really didn't come into his own yet. He didn't have the confidence. I think there was a little bit of
tacky gimmick that he was wearing like a shredded tablecloth to the ring. It was terrible.
Yeah, he looked like he should be on the Flintstones or something, and he had the kind of longer hair on top like a pineapple. And but it was really interesting, how far he's come since that. But that's one of those stories where it's like, yeah, right, you were giving The Rock a pep talk, and I was like, I swear to God. But I was really, I really found, my fit with my gimmick and everything. So I was out there being myself, just turned up to 10. And so it was nice of him to compliment that. And, so, oh yeah, he popped the crowd. How and I'm the same kind of a baby face, like what's going on. And it was pretty funny. But yeah, so after that match with Taka, Victor pulled me aside, and Edge had just got signed there. So, they were doing a lot of promo shots of him and everything, and he had the jacket, and he was coming through the crowd and everything. And I was really happy for Adam because he had all the tools, and just, here it was, his time was coming. He just, fit the machine at the time, WWF. So, but Victor pulled me aside, and he goes, what do you do right now? And I said, well, I'm in school and this and that. And he goes, how'd you like to go to Puerto Rico for 2 years? And I was like, for what? And he goes, developmental contract. You had to just come out with it. I was kind of oblivious. And I said, oh. He goes, yeah. He goes, they have a vision for you, but they don't think you're quite ready, and they want you to just get seasoned in Puerto Rico, where you wear a hood, a mask, and grow your hair out, and put on about 25 pounds or more, just beef up a little bit, and we'll season you, and then when they're ready, they'll bring you up. And I thought about it, and I had a really, you would think you just jump right on this, right? You're being offered this opportunity, and WWF's becoming the hottest company, and I'm like, I really don't know. And he's like, what? And he goes, you don't understand. He goes, do you own a house? I was like, no. He goes, go buy a house. He goes, do you own a Cadillac or a nice car? I went, no. He goes, go buy it. He goes, your bills will get taken care of while you're here, and you're paid to just go to Puerto Rico and keep wrestling. He goes, forget college. You don't need college. You need to just take this opportunity. You're like at that point in your career, and you're young, where, you're going to do something now. And I turned it down. I said, you know what? Thanks, but no thanks. And that's where I went, okay, I think the flame is going out here for doing this on a grander stage, which is really interesting to have said that, because that was 98. And, there were guys, the spot that I just had this strange feeling inside when this all happened, Sean, that if I stayed in wrestling and went full time like this, I was going to end up dead. And I had no idea why I had that fear, but it was very heavy on me. And I just knew that I needed to do something else. And strangely enough, the guy that kind of got that deal was Crash Holly. He came out of California with Mike Modest and all those guys. But Crash Holly got the spot, so to speak. But, they obviously did something different with him. And he ended up dead. And I'm like, was that supposed to be me? It's very strange.
My question, because like you said, you started in 94. You started training in 94, and then you were out by 2000. And it seems like at that time in 97, the business had already, you were already burned out from it. Was it just because of what was it more because of all the wrestling that you were just burned out, or what was it? Because it just seems like you were getting burned out with only being in the business so long.
What was really strange is I think I've heard other guys say it too. When you're going through your run, it's going so fast that you don't really know what's going on, like how it's perceived to the fan, or how the ratings are, or the fact that we're like when I was working with Taka at the Gund Arena in Cleveland, it was a sold out packed stadium. It's like you don't really fully absorb it yet. And I didn't realize what a hot run wrestling really was on, because I wasn't really watching the product. I was just out there doing it. You were just being a part of it, yeah. Yeah, I was being a part of it. So, it was really like, because I had spent some time even around Steve Austin, because there was a period of time when he got signed as the ringmaster, and he went down to Lima to roll around with Al Snow and kind of, figure out how he wanted to work in WWF. And I took all of that for granted. Like, it just was, it's just one of the boys. And, I didn't realize what a special, and still talked about as we're doing it today, era that would really be. So there are points where, I was burned out. I knew that I was good at it. And, there was that inner conflict of, do I just keep doing this anyway? But the thing is like there were weekends where if I went to the East Coast, they were running like 2-3 shows a day on Saturday, 2-3 shows on a Sunday, and I was working, really aggressive matches with the likes of how I had mentioned Mike Modest, who had tryouts. I think that was in which documentary was that where they talked about his tryout. Roland Alexander was either the trainer or his promoter, but he had some tryouts there. But he was very aggressive in the ring, so we had very physical matches, and it was beating the crap out of my body to where, I would either be concussed, banged up so bad that my body wasn't coming back as fast. And I was like, well, I'm not going to do anything, I'm not going to do any PEDs or anything to enhance, and heal up faster. So I don't know how I can continue to do this. And so I think that was weighing on my mind. Even though I enjoyed it, I thought, I got a plan for life after this. What am I going to do if I get that one injury? Draws, a little side note, Draws, who got paralyzed in a match with D'Lo Brown, just a few days before that, I had worked a 6-man tag with, on my side was a guy on the East Coast named the Boogie Woogie Man. And I think maybe Reckless Youth or another guy on the East Coast was in our tag. And it was Draws, it was Prince Albert, and a third. And I went over Prince Albert with a 450, but I just worked Draws like twice that weekend. And then the next weekend he was paralyzed. And it shook me too, because I went, there's a lot of times I've landed on my head and I'm still here and still able to move around. And so I think some of that started to creep in a little bit,
Yeah, you were, and plus too, it almost seems like your body, like you said, your body was giving you a warning, because of the physicality of it that you've been through. Plus, like you said, you were working, they'd have 3 matches in a night. You'd be getting thrown all over the place, and it's almost like you were, like I said, you weren't really paying attention to the product around you. It's like you were going faster than going faster than the product was, so it was in your rear view because you weren't even watching it. So in a way, it's almost like time went by quicker for you, but really it didn't, because of just how you were bouncing all over the place, and your body,
exactly.
Like I said, your body was like, "Hey, stop! We gotta slow down here."
Yeah, that was it. I think what's interesting is it's a little poetic, where I never really thought about this till you said that, but what got me interested in wrestling and made me fall in love with it was the fact that it was year round. And what like crippled me emotionally to it, or it made me, in the famous words of Shawn Michaels, lost my smile there, was the fact that it was year round and there was no breaks. But so when I left, I was still getting calls for months, like, "You're not really done, are you?" Because I quietly bowed out, and I said, "Yeah, I'm done." I said, "I'm jumping in. I'm finishing up college, and I'm already working in my career now." And I was like full tilt with personal training and everything. And guys just didn't believe it. They, I still got calls for a year, like, "Come on, man, come back. What are you doing?" And then, like I told you, when I fell back in love with the product in 2013. I started to watch it religiously again, and it was fun to watch it again as a fan, because when you're inside and you know the business, it kind of takes some of the fun away from it. And I think that's maybe why I didn't watch it when I was going through that, the 90s. And then watching it later on, having stepped away for so long, I could appreciate it again as a fan. I enjoyed watching it as a fan. And, at the time, Jimmy Jacobs was there, working as a writer, and then Adam Pearce, who's there now, and I had good relationships with them, and a lot with Adam. And Adam was like, "Anytime you want to come in the back, Even today, I mean, within the last 2 years, he's we've messaged back and forth, and he's like, "Come back and say hi to the boys and everything." And I'm like, "Yeah." So I'll buy a house show ticket and sit somewhere and just watch it as a fan. It would, but they look back later and say, "Oh, it would have been fun to meet some of the boys." But that's kind of what happened. It was funny when I got back in. Travis Titan was, a young up and coming kid out of Seth Rollins' school, and they decided they wanted to do a little program with us with, the old school versus the new school, the disrespectful new kid, and so we did a little spot where he's calling me out as I'm just a guest at a show, and I jump in the ring and kind of take it to him for a minute, and then we have a match the next month. And the decision was made at like the last minute where Bubba, who's running shows in Wyandotte, Michigan, he would message me from time to time, "You ever want to come back? You ever want to come back?" And so for years that was our running joke. So I was driving, and I parked somewhere, and all of a sudden my phone, and I was thinking to myself, I wonder if I still have one more run in me. And all of a sudden I get a message right at that time from Bubba. He sends me a text. He's like, "Hey," he goes, "I'm running a show next week. You in?" He goes, "I got a spot for you." And I messaged him back. I said, "Yeah, I'm in." And he's like, "What?" He goes, Don't rib me. Don't, you're working me." I said, "No, I'm in." I said, "What do you want to do?" I said, "Call me." So he called me. He goes, "You're serious?" I said, "Yeah, what the hell?" I said, "I'm in shape." Because you in shape to get in there?" I said, "Yeah, I'm in shape. I'm always in shape. Let's go." So I did that spot with Travis, and as soon as I jumped in, the spot was, I run in the ring to attack him, was he's just, berating me and, heckling me. So I jump in, duck a clothesline, hit the ropes, hit him with a couple drop kicks. I hadn't been in a ring in a decade and a half, and it felt like the most natural thing that I could ever do. And I went, "Oh, no." The bug.
You got that itch. You got that.
Yeah, I transported, and I was like, okay. So then I worked, a couple dozen matches over the next 2 years and had a lot of fun. But yeah, it's really interesting.
Yeah, speaking of that, I remember when literally you, because I was covering the independents with the radio and with the websites and stuff. And I remember you literally you were working and all of a sudden you just disappeared. You stopped, and I remember sitting there like, what? I'm like, did I miss something? What happened?
Yeah.
And then because literally there wasn't like you went out with an injury or whatever. It's just literally you just weren't at shows, and then it's like, okay, what's going on here? And then when you were talking about when you came back in 2013, I remember I popped hard when I was like, there's no way he's going back in that ring. And I remember when I saw, because like you said, you hadn't wrestled in the longest time, and I'm like, okay, there's 1 week that the one show that he was talking about you. I was like, okay, that's random. And then next thing, like I said, Jimi V's in the match. Wait a minute, what year is this? It threw me off because I'm like, because obviously we had Google. I'm like, I remember Googling like, has he been wrestling somewhere and he just came back to the area? What's going on here?
Yeah.
Because I remember when you had that show, I wanted to be at that show. I was like losing my mind because I could not make it to that show. I'm like, somebody has to give me the tape of this. I'm like, I got to see this, because it's. I just think about with all the the older guys, and I mean, like you were one of the top guys that everyone was watching, and I'm not telling you something that you don't already know because everyone wanted you to work on their shows. So you to disappear and then all of a sudden come out back out of nowhere after a decade out, and then it's like all of a sudden he's wrestling. And it's like, wait a minute, what just happened here? It's like, is this been, like I said, it's been worked on for months, and it's really been kept under the, under the mat, or what's going on, and great,
I appreciate that, man. Yeah, it was very strange when it happened because I honestly had no serious thought
no
of being
intention
back
of doing
in the ring. Yeah, no intention at all. It was a passing thought here and there. And for about a decade after I was done in 2000, I didn't think twice about ever getting in the ring. Like, guys would ask me, you miss it, this and that. I'm like, I really don't. I felt like the chapter was really closed. I left before I killed myself in the ring or got an injury. And I thought it was really done. And then I realized it's never over. You see guys come back 100 times after they say they're done. There's just something about it that's always in your blood, and at least for a lot of us. And so when I got in there, it was like I feel like I was so beat up after that match with Travis, and was so blown up because something happened where we weren't supposed to be the main event. We were supposed to be like a semi-main or an attraction. And I told Bubba, he goes, "How long do you want to go?" And I said, like 7 minutes. I said, I'm in shape, but ring shape is a totally different animal. And we ended up having to go 30 because there was the main event. They had gotten pulled over or something happened where they couldn't make it to the show. And Bubba's like, "You guys need to go 30 out there." I went, "Oh, for God's sake." And Travis, who's great, but he's, at that point, he's really green. And I'm like, this is going to be a nightmare. Like, I don't know what we can do.
You basically had a green guy and an old green guy, if you think about it, because you hadn't been in the ring for a decade, so you got the real green guy.
Yeah, I had so much
and
rust
green.
on me. Yeah, it was something, but it's good. I mean, it went way better than I thought it could go. And I was blown up probably in 4 minutes. My lungs were burning.
You still had 26 minutes to go and 4 minutes in. Oh, shoot.
And I'm like, this is how I die. I am going to die in a ring right here. I didn't know what happened like this, but, I finally, calmed down and found my way to get some rest. And I finished the match and, had a little bit left in me. But I'm sitting in the back after for probably 30 minutes and just like sitting there like quiet. And Nate Matson comes up to me and he's like, "Brother, you okay?" And I was like, "I don't know." And I was still breathing heavy. I said, I forgot how in shape being in ring shape really is. And but it was so much fun. I was so beat up the next day. But the way I described it to people at the time is I felt alive again. To feel the body hurting was like, it was something different than just like a physical workout. It was something very different. And there's that brotherhood and that tribal belonging that happens with the boys that there's nothing like it. So I did that. And I said, okay, I'm coming back next month. Did something with Nate, had some fun there. Did some stuff with, God, why does his name escape me? He had some tryouts at NXT. It'll come back to me. But, it was a lot of fun. And then that last one I did, it was a match with Nate. And I did, the finish was a 450, miss it. Nate hits me with his finisher. And I did the 450, and I overextended and hit my head and knocked myself out in the ring. And Nate didn't know that I knocked myself out, so he's firing up, waiting for me to come up and feed him for the finish, and I'm out. And he basically turns me over and gets the pin. And Mike McMahon carried me to the back. And so once I'm starting to come back too, I asked Nate when our match was, and he goes, "Uh-oh." He goes, "It was over a while ago, buddy." I said, and I thought they were ribbing me, and I go out there and all the chairs are down, the ring's halfway down, and I knew, okay, something bad happened here. But so then I decided I better take a little break from this. But I'm always, it's always there, and I'm always in shape. I'm probably in better shape now than when I had that run. But with everything going on with COVID and smaller shows and whatever's going on, it's like, we'll just wait till we open back up a little bit more. But, I can still go, and it's fun. And, just anywhere I fit in the card, I don't care about, going over or anything. I just want to have some fun and give back a little bit if I can for whatever it's worth.
The one thing that you have to think too is that, like you said, you originally only wanted to go 7, and you guys ended up going 30. It still shows that you're still able to stretch it out, and you especially when it was green that was in the ring with you, you're still able to okay, this is how we're gonna stretch this match out. So at least you still had that mindset. Even after not being in the, in a ring and in the business for, as long as you were.
Yeah, I think that's something that that it's like riding a bike, you know, you pick it back up. And like I said, when I went back, one of the things that I really enjoyed, like I was like a little kid in a candy store, and I didn't have that much fun in my, you know, real run in the 90s, but it was paying attention to the crowd. It was calming down. It was being aware of everything around me and what was going on, and just enjoying myself, not having any pressure, having fun. I felt like it was really for me and not just the pressure of expectation of others or to perform and have the best match on the card or anything. Because I was really hard on myself, and I always expected a lot from myself, despite what anyone's expectation was. So this time it was like if I would fumble something or, you know, whatever, I would truly be able to laugh at myself and just have fun with it. So that was the difference. But I was surprised that I kind of had the guts or whatever, or maybe it was reckless to just get out there and try it anyways, because I just thought, you know what the hell? I miss it now, and, you know, I needed something to push me. And that's what, so I just jumped in and did it, and you realize, you know, what you miss, the camaraderie in the back, and, you know, everything that at one point in time was my world, you know, and to be able to go back and do that on some level, have my son see me, and like I told you earlier, getting some, you know, digital good footage of myself, you know, was really important to me. So it was fun, and, you know, it may happen again. We'll see.
You know, like they always say that you never really retire from wrestling. Yeah, I mean, really, the only way you retire from wrestling is when you're 6 feet under. Because I've seen so many guys retire, and it's like they come out of retirement every, you know, twice a year, and you know, and they do that for a good stretch of almost a decade. You know, no one ever really retires until they just, you know, they can't do anything anymore. You know. Now, go ahead. I'm sorry.
No, that's exactly it. When I did it, I didn't want, and don't get me wrong, when I say I was relaxed and was having fun and doing it for me, I still didn't want to be that guy that way overstayed his welcome and is an embarrassment in the ring, but nobody wants to tell him, you know. I wanted to be at least passable and look like I belonged on it. Like, I didn't want to take a spot from a guy that was coming up or green and needed an opportunity. I wanted to be there and look like I belonged, you know, on the show. And so if I had, you know, gotten way out of shape and you know, was an embarrassment, I definitely wouldn't have put trunks on again and went out there. But I knew, you know, I was going to look good out there and I wasn't going to embarrass myself. So I said, what the hell? Let's go for it.
Now, speaking of the matches that you've had, what are some of the guys that you enjoyed having matches with when you were wrestling back then? Yeah.
You know, it's funny. There's so many guys that, you know, I would work, you know, a program with where we would work, you know, maybe 10, 15, 30 times. And, you know, with those guys, the matches always got easier because you really started to like almost read each other's body language, almost like an old married couple that can give each other a look and know where the other one is thinking. Some of the matches I think that were perhaps my most enjoyable were probably the easy ones. And I think if I was to pick one particular guy, it would be Steve Nixon. I just always felt that whenever we worked, it was like just we had really good chemistry. You know, our timing was similar. He was the perfect, you know, antagonist to me, being the, you know, white meat baby face, as they call it. And, you know, we just were really smooth. Calavera, Cortez, Tommy Wonder, he was also very easy. There were some big guys too, you know, not just like maybe light heavyweight or cruiserweight guys, but like Brian Fury, back in the day, he was also real easy to work with. Joey Legend, he was pretty easy to work with as well, and big guy, but you know, he was really light on his feet and you know, very professional and, just really good guys to pace with. I would say another guy that when we had some matches, whether on the East Coast or here, Reckless Youth, Tom Carter, he was fantastic. And, was really easy tagging with Adam Pierce, as he was known in the day, Scrap Iron. He was a lot of fun.
Yep. With that flowing hair, that hairdo that he had, not the bald head he's got now.
Yeah, he looks better with the bald head, to be honest. Before he looked like he was a reject from Poison, but I'm sure he misses his hair. But I'm thankful every day that I still have mine. It's not wavy yet. It's not waving goodbye.
Now, in the same breath of that, was there any time that you actually had guys that were, you don't have to name names, but you had guys that maybe might have refused to work with you?
There was nobody that refused to work with me. There were guys that maybe thought that, or they didn't like where the match was going to go, or what the promoter had in mind for the match. One notable one was I had a clip the other day or a couple weeks ago with Bo Lewis, where I was doing a little bit of a twist just to kind of freshen up and change direction a little bit, where I was doing The Rock. I was doing a rip-off imitation of The Rock. And Bo Lewis was really, at the time, I think he might have had a handful of matches under his belt, but he was, he was going to be one of those guys that was going to, be dependable, meaning he's going to be at the show. You knew you can rely on him. And, but again, he was still just kind of getting, breaking his teeth. And at this point in time, I probably had, 2-3 years under my belt and was working a lot more. And we had a match where he was just dead weight to, like he was heavy as hell. Like a guy that's like a size of meanie, a 300-pound plus guy would, feed up for a body slam, and it was like a feather. And then Bo Lewis, who was all of 160 pounds, was like, dead weight. And so that was a hard match. There were some guys also in Indianapolis for Mike Sample's promotion back in the 90s that were just really, I think it was really a clash in styles more so than it was a personality conflict or anything. But outside of that, I don't think there was really too many guys where it was, where it got, like, it was just super difficult, whether it was the politics in the back or anything, in the ring itself. Because the thing was, wherever I went, they would put a title on me and I'd get a little title run. And, one of the reasons it was explained to me is that I had no ego about what I was doing. Like, I knew it's a work and I was out there to entertain, and I was just happy to be a part of the business and to put on the best match we could and to get the best reactions that we could. So whatever, it was going to be about that night, it was sort of like a character in a movie. If he gets killed, he doesn't, get upset and take it personally that he's getting killed in the movie or he's going to lose the battle at the end. It's entertainment, and, you want it to look as credible and to let people suspend their disbelief and enjoy what they're watching. So I never really cared about it. So promoters knew they can trust me, and they'd put me on a hot streak, because when it came time to either drop the strap or to, lay down for a guy, I didn't care. It was business. And, I was not going to be, I wasn't going to be worked by the business, more or less. I was trying to be as professional as I could. And I was just happy to be there, and I never wanted to lose sight of, the only reason you won is because that guy was willing to lay there for 1, 2, 3. And so I always, was appreciative of guys that put me over, that would sell for me. So I got that reputation. And then guys that might have had an ego, knew of my reputation, and then they were fine to sell or to do the job or whatever. So I always maintained, that type of reputation, always strive to do that. And guys would, would work me or try to, get under my skin to just kind of see how far they could push me. Like saying, oh yeah, this Jimi V guy's got a big ego. He never wants to lay down and da-da-da. But, they were doing it as a rib, and I just, sold it and just, played along. Basically that was that. And I was like, where's my Where's my Evian water? Where's my grapes? Where's my green M&Ms? Just do stuff like that. But it was all in fun. And, again, there's just a real brotherhood that you really can't relate to outside of the wrestling business with these guys. We all have some type of mental disorder that we share in common that makes us want to do this stuff. And, you really don't understand it unless you've actually been a part of the show, unless you've been in the back, unless you've been up and down the road with guys.
Yeah, like I said, because you were only in the business for so long, it's just in a way for me it was kind of a weird question to ask you, favorite matches, because like I said, you were only in the business for a short period of time. So it was kind of like, well, I know you did a lot of matches all over the place because like you said, you were in the right place, right time, and you did all that traveling really early in your career. That it, not saying that there was probably a lot of guys that you probably wanted to have matches with that you were never able to because you decided to get out of the business, because like we discussed, that you were semi kind of burned out and your body was telling you, okay, you need to get out now. Something was telling you. And also, go ahead.
Oh no, it's okay. Yeah, I mean, I think the last I just wanted to add this little note, like maybe the last few months of my run were brutal, where I was on the East Coast and I was working with some guys that had some strong style training, and we're doing little stints in Japan. And so I'm working with those guys 2 times in a day and maybe 3 times on a Saturday. And, so it was like a clash of styles, but it worked when, we did the matches. One particular guy, I think he was in, not Wrestling with Shadows, but it was another documentary, the one with Mick Foley, taking all the chair shots from The Rock at the end. And Mike Modest out of California.
Okay.
And very stiff. I mean, it was a very tight, stiff match. We really laid it in on each other. And so doing that day in and day out, and then just trying to, pick it up and then, rinse, repeat. It was getting rough.
Yeah, definitely taking a toll on your body there. So it's true. Now also, in that same aspect, were there guys that I know you said you kind of strayed away from it, but were there some guys that you saw in your early beginnings that you knew had something, to go on in the business, but they, for some reason, they just didn't do it. They just didn't make it.
Yeah. It is interesting because you don't really know what you have inside until you get in that ring and you start bumping, you start, learning the tricks of the trade, so to speak. And, some guy might have all the physical tools and they just, for whatever reason, the heart wasn't quite there. They just didn't have the heart to keep going. And, learning course correct and get better. And there were other guys that I saw coming up that didn't look like they had that much potential, but they had so much heart and they would have done anything. It's almost like they cut off all other options. You ever hear the story of when you would have a neighboring country wanting to come in and invade a land and take over? What they would do is they would sail to the land, and then when they docked at land, when they got to the land, they would burn their own ship down as a way to intimidate who they were invading. So they were sending the message, we're either going to take your land or we're going to die. And a lot of ways, these guys had decided, you know what, I'm only going to, I'm not going to have any backup plan. I'm going to be a professional wrestler. So they had cut off all other options. There were stories about Sylvester Stallone getting into movies, doing something similar to that, just starving. And they only left themselves the option of making it in pro wrestling. And, those guys that were really hungry like that, I don't think I can count on one hand the guys that didn't make it on some level of success that did that. But, everybody's got different factors in their life. They have, different goals in their life and different responsibilities. But, I didn't know how long when I decided to be a pro wrestler. It's all I wanted to do. And when I got in and was doing it, I found that, there was other interests that were evolving in me, and I wasn't just wanting to sit in front of a TV and study tapes all the time. I'd be in the gym, or I'd be reading other things, and I was like, well, something's going on here. I was in my head, I was just thinking, I'm planning for life after the business in case I get hurt, and I can't do this anymore. I didn't want to be just, a washed up, beat up guy that had nothing else to do but hang on to the former glory. That was a piece of my life, and it wasn't going to be my whole life. But like I told you, I had, I thought when I was done, and that was it. And then I wasn't going to look back, and it didn't really think about it very much. And then it, over a decade later, the bug bit me again, and it's never ever completely out of your system. And I fell in love with it again in a different way, like I told you.
And it's just like, like when I've talked to other people that, that because whenever I hear someone say I'm retiring, and it's always like, like you said, you had people calling you for almost a year. They're like, yeah, you're not really done. It's, everyone says that, but a lot of them actually stay away. You did stay away. And then, like I've talked to some people, they're like, once you actually, you stay away, and then you actually go there, and it's almost like you get that magic touch. You touch that ring rope, and all of a sudden, all that nostalgia and everything just comes right back into you, and then you start getting that itch, as they always call it, right back.
Yeah, I think a lot of times too, whether I don't know how many guys have talked about this, but I can tell you from personal conversations with a lot of guys, growing up, you didn't feel, at least this is my story, and I knew a lot of guys that echoed this, but you didn't really feel like you belonged anywhere. Like, I did play sports, and I was, I would be like in high school, you have all the cliques, and, I had friends in all of the cliques, but I never wanted to be too close to any one stereotype clique, like the jocks or preps or burnouts, as we called it, whatever, the nerds. There were guys in any one of those social circles that were my buddies, and they all had, different aspects of their personality or interests that I had an interest in too. So I never really wanted to identify with any of them. And partly maybe is because I didn't feel like it was my fit, and those were my people. And then when I entered pro wrestling, I realized I had so much in common with a lot of these guys, and I found my fit. It's something that I do pretty well. I picked up, it was hard, don't get me wrong, it's the hardest thing I've ever done, but in the same vein, I picked it up easier than I thought it should be picked up. And so that was that sense of belonging that was, amazing. It was like, when you find that thing, something where you feel like you were created for that was your purpose. I felt like that was my purpose, and it was. And when I saw some guys that had walked away or, had been injured and not able to come back, and some of them were so bitter, like a scorn lover that, just can't let go of their, the ex that hurt them. I never wanted to do that with pro wrestling. I loved it. It was, phenomenal. It gave me a sense of identity. And so the love was still there, but it wasn't anything where I was disgusted by the business, or I got, sold a bill of goods and it didn't deliver. It delivered more than I thought it was ever going to. I didn't care, what level of success I achieved. I just wanted to be a part of it. And so I always had that attitude where I didn't think anything was owed to me, I was given an opportunity to be, behind the wizard's curtain, so to speak, and so for that, I was always grateful. And, I didn't ever want to walk away from it or, speak ill of it, because I still love the business.
Mm-hmm. Now, one thing I've got to ask, like you said, you would, obviously, you kept up your physique and everything, because you're speaking about when you did end up coming back into the ring and stuff. You're also a personal trainer, correct?
Correct. Yeah, I've been a personal trainer now since That's another funny story. I was actually certified in 97, but I did not use my certification until 2000. So I had a national certification, a degree in exercise science, but I was more intimidated and fearful to actually one-on-one work with somebody, paying me to train them, than I was to put on spandex and go in front of, 20 to 20,000 people, which was very strange.
Yeah, and that was the reason why I asked, because now a lot of the things that you did as a personal trainer to keep your physique and keep everything working fine, is that what you now are teaching, that those same techniques that you were doing back then? Like you said, you were licensed back in 97. A lot of the stuff that you were doing then, is that same stuff you're doing now and now teaching to others?
Yeah, on some level, definitely. Even before I got my degree and certified in training, I was very much like a student and self-taught, where I would read every book, watch every VHS tape or whatever I can get my hands on that taught me about training, taught me about nutrition, and I would apply it, and I would make mistakes along the way and learn and then correct. Instead of thinking I had to have everything down perfect and then start, I just started with little things where, I loved fast food. I was addicted to, eating McDonald's every day for lunch, and I would order pizza every night for dinner. And then I said, okay, well, I don't know how to do this exactly, but I know that a baked chicken breast is better than a hamburger. And I know that, a baked potato is better than French fries. And I started with those things, and then little by little it evolved to where when I started to see the results and feel better, look better, then I, just completely fell in love with it. So then as the years go on, from the time I was certified in 97 to current day, training, nutrition, supplementation, it's all evolved, where the principles really stay the same, but the methods change. So, there might be this a new craze with fitness that comes out. And, there's always a piece of it that you can use as a professional for clients, but then there's also stuff that's kind of throwaway or gimmicky, and then you got to decipher through that. And sometimes you just make mistakes and you learn from it. But a lot of times, at least as a personal trainer, it's really not a matter of like saying, oh, I found the greatest workout, now everybody should do my workout. There's trainers that will, whatever workout they're doing, they think all of their clients should be doing. And that could be from an 8-year-old soccer kid to Mrs. Jones, the mom, to the grandma. And it's like, it doesn't apply. Everybody has their own unique goals, and the program should fit them. So everything is really uniquely custom designed. And I think that's why I've been able to do this successfully, post wrestling.
Mm-hmm. Now, do you still kind of have that bite to come back, or you think you're done?
No,
you still got it?
Much to my girlfriend's chagrin, it's still there. But again, like I told you, it's not in an effort to say, you know what, I think that I could get a contract, go to AEW or go to NXT or do any of this stuff. I don't want to go to that level. I applaud those guys. It's just that there's something that happens when you it's just like setting a goal. You have a goal in mind, you have a timeline and a deadline to which you need to accomplish it, and you all of a sudden have something to work forward to. Look forward to and work forward to. I don't know if you know Andy Muscat.
Yep.
Yeah, Andy. I actually trained Andy back in the day, and then he got some more training later on. But one of the things that he and I had joked about for years was he might call or text me and say, "Hey, I'm fat. I need to schedule, or I need to get booked on a show so that I diet and train." So it was almost like, it gives you a sense of hope and something to force yourself to push yourself to another level. And, then you start counting the days. You think about what you want to do in your match. How is your gear? Do you want to update that? Whatever. And it's almost like, I think as I get older, it's almost like a way to prove to yourself that you still got it, or you can still go. So, when guys, walk away and then, they make a comeback out of nowhere where you think they're done, I think a little bit of that is ego. Some of it is to try to capture a little bit of youth and, hold on to something. Perhaps it's the brotherhood thing where you're missing, they say a lot of guys that are retired from the NFL, what they miss the most is the camaraderie, as being around, the like-minded guys that are all pushing for the same thing. And then, once that's over, you might maintain a couple of good friendships out of it, but you miss that camaraderie. So I think that's a piece of it. I definitely, the fact is I still keep myself in really good shape. And don't get me wrong, being in ring shape and being in, like bodybuilding or fitness shape is a little different. Make no mistake about it. But, I know that at the level I take care of myself and eat right still, part of it is for, an aesthetic business, which is, there's a lot of parallels there with fitness and with professional wrestling. It's a narcissistic industry, both of them on some level. So, there's definitely an easier crossover rather than, say, Reckless Youth, who's an accountant, going from the suit and tie every day. It's like, well, he may have missed a few workouts because he's got to, take care of business, 9 to 5, maybe take the kids to soccer, this and that. But, being in a gym all day, it affords me the accessibility. It's a really hard thing to not excuse working out when you're, making your living in a gym.
Now, obviously, like I said, you were here for 4 years and you came back for a little bit. What are some of the things that you have seen that has changed over that course of time, and that you wish from what you noticed while you've been back, you were back in the ring and at wrestling shows, that you think would be nice that you're trying to figure out where where they kind of lost something, lost a step or something that was going on back then when you came into the business that maybe no longer is going on, but maybe should still be in place?
That it's an interesting question. I think my answer is probably going to be a lot like some of the older grizzled vets, but there was and I think the internet and culture, the things, our technological innovations have maybe are a part to blame for it. But I think when you peeled back the curtain and everybody knows how it works, and then there's a group of fans that grew up kind of wink wink, I know the terms, I know this, I know that. I don't know if there's as much appreciation for being accepted into a locker room and being in a ring and all those things. I think there was something really mysterious and magical about it in the 90's still. And that was just before kayfabe died. And, it was, but the way it was there were guys that when you're green, you're getting trained, you had the utmost respect, and you did not know like how you were going to be accepted or treated, or not necessarily that you walked on eggshells around these guys, but you just definitely had an awe. And I think the young guys were more receptive to the advice and the critique of veterans, as opposed to being offended and saying, what do you know, old man? I didn't personally, in the times I've been back in the locker room since I came back, I didn't necessarily personally experience anything where I thought somebody was disrespectful or, that it was an extremely different environment. But I can tell you that there's not as much, from what I remember, camaraderie. And I don't know if some of that is just because, every guy's got his face down in his Instagram or his phone and just worrying about his match and not really talking or getting to know anybody else. That's the one thing I noticed. It's just less social, but that's society in general. Even in the gym setting, it's the same thing. When I was, just a gym member, going to the gyms and even through going to the gyms on the road, there was a sense of camaraderie in the gym. There was a brotherhood where guys, would spot each other or, give each other fitness tips, or just you develop friendships in there. And now everybody's got, AirPods and they're, doing their own thing and then trying to move on to the next thing in their day. There's not as much of that social interaction. And I think that, it's just true in anything you look at now. But, I couldn't imagine trying to be a 20-something making it in the business today. I don't know. I think it's easier to get into the business, but I think it's a lot harder to get noticed than it was.
Because there's so many guys.
So many guys, and they're so damn talented. I mean, the moves they can do, and the stuff that they can do. Everybody's got. I wasn't like an Ultimate Warrior type body or Rick Rude body, but I was in great shape, and that was still not necessarily the norm then. And now every guy looks like they could step on a bodybuilding stage. So it's like, what is setting you apart? And every guy can do the Hurricane Rana. Every guy can do 450 or an acai moonsault or something. So it's like, okay, now what's going to separate you? What's going to, you look at an Orange Cassidy, he's got a completely different gimmick than anything that's out there. And again, that's what separates them. So, to have to try to create a mystique and make yourself stand out, I think would be a lot harder today.
Now, in that same aspect, do you think, like you said, do you think that you would have you would have had to have changed your ways as to how you did things in the ring if you were starting now? I mean, from the way that you did things, that obviously you'd have to adapt. But do you see yourself that you literally would be, your whole makeup would have been completely changed?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think that it would have been a lot more vanilla today to be the Jimi V character, 80s babyface style wrestler throwback. I think it would almost, if it was to work, it would have almost turned into like the New Rockers, Leaf Cassidy, Marty, where they were almost a parody of themselves. And then that would have been a comedy gimmick that would have had a cup of coffee and been gone. But yeah, I think that my fear would have been, because I'm not a big fan of this guy, but as far as his work, I don't know him personally, but the what's his name?
Oh yeah,
Zack Ryder.
I know who you're talking about. Yeah.
Yeah, and I'm like, but then I kind of looked and I was like, maybe that's because that's me looking in the mirror. Like, I think that there's a piece of that that's like this, white meat baby face. That's just, but he, besides the gimmick, just the tagline and stuff, there's a lot of parallels there. And that's where I think that maybe, a Jimi V comeback kid character would have to be a little bit different. I think that, where I took some of my matches coming out of retirement, where I grew a beard, I kind of had a chip on my shoulder. I tried to tap into anything that would get me frustrated, like about the current business. Like, how can I just be pissed off? Because that's not my nature. But everybody's got a dark side. They got an angel on one shoulder and they got a devil on the other. So I was like, I got to tap into the devil. So, just do that, tap into it, just be this bitter, guy and go out there, just be a little bit more vicious. And it was fun. It was fun to heal it up a little bit. But yeah, so I think that maybe, current day, I would have had to evolve and maybe just been like, the cocky smart ass that needs to be like the little bully that's got the big henchman to do his work for him. That might have worked. But I think I would have also had to have had more depth in my promos and couldn't get away with the Sports Center straight stuff.
Yeah, you'd have to delve in a little bit more and be a lot. You'd have to probably go a lot deeper with the promos than you had to back then.
Yeah, and I don't think that it was also given a lot of interview time. I mean, the stuff I would do would be for like the local market and just for, the match at hand. It wasn't necessarily on a national stage. it never quite got to that level. And but I think that's one of the things that sharing locker rooms with guys that were good promo guys. There's a few times working for Mick Foley in Pennsylvania, and picking his brain and doing more stuff like that, and just being around guys that could cut a promo. I'm sure that would have evolved, and I'm not really sure where it would have been, because I think it wasn't shortly after I left that WCW folded or Vince bought it, and then there were a lot of guys that were, around my size and same style and things like that, that there wasn't work for a little while. So maybe it would have been Ring of Honor, maybe Puerto Rico, Mexico, Japan. I really don't know. But even if I had taken that deal, the developmental deal in 99, then, who knows where that would have ended up.
Because if you think about it too, is that, they figured you'd be down there for what, about, I can't remember, what, about a year or something like that.
Yeah, what I was told was 1 to 2 years, they said I'd be down there and then be brought back up.
And here's the bad thing, though, is that by the time, if you've been down there for 2 years, by the time you came back up, they didn't really have a cruiserweight division anymore, or lightweight division anymore. It was basically wiped out after WCW was gone, because they really brought in the lightweight cruiserweight division because of what WCW was doing. Once they bought their competition, there really wasn't use for the smaller guys, and you started seeing the guys disappear. I mean, you would see some of the smaller guys like Paul London and stuff being out there in the ring, but that was, those were tag matches. You didn't see the smaller guys really out there, except for, like Rey Mysterio Jr. coming out there and Chavo or whatever. But other than that, they had that, that plan that they had for you. You would have popped out there right after that. And one of the smaller guys that they did bring in, which completely blew up quickly, was when they brought Taz into the WWF.
Right.
He was one of the big guys in ECW. You brought him into the WWF world. And, I mean, like I said, anything could have happened. You could have been down there for 2 years, came up, and they brought you up. But it just where they placed you and when you came up depended on what direction you would have gone, really.
Yeah, it's kind of like looking back and trying to, rewrite history.
Try to piece together.
Yeah, it's really hard, but I think you're absolutely right. I don't know if there definitely wouldn't have been a place there. I mean, if I'm going to say what would have happened, I think that I probably would have got a release, or maybe just beaten to a pulp on TV and run-ins and whatever, and then ended up probably around that time going to the Indies, maybe TNA for a cup of coffee there. I know they did their X Division stuff, and who knows? I mean, there's guys that are smaller that, somehow, some way, I mean, Mysterio was special, but like a Daniel Bryan, not the biggest guy, but, with the right push and the right, style and everything, can be, taken as a contender. But, for me, I don't know that I would have, and it's all who knows, but if my style and everything would have evolved to that level, or if maybe I would have, reached my peak with, well, that's what I can do. I mean, I remember about the time I was leaving, there were some tapes of the stuff going on in developmental where you had Brock Lesnar. I mean, these guys were not there yet. They were signed to developmental deals. You had Brock Lesnar, Randy Orton, Batista, and Cena. And so we're looking at some tapes of these guys, and there's a tape of Brock Lesnar, and they're like, oh, yeah, he was a champion amateur guy, blah, blah, blah. So here's this young Brock Lesnar, jacked to the gills, and he's doing 450s on these, these tapes. I went, oh, Jesus. I said, my days are numbered. The big guy is doing that shit. You didn't see guys that big that were able to do that then. They always, you got to protect the big guy. You do the big man moves. You don't do that stuff. And I went, oh, my God, if this is the future, I'm going to be obsolete.
Basically because, the 90s and whatnot, it was about your size, about being the big guy, the tall big guy and stuff, and that, the muscle bound guy. And then, basically Lesnar was adapting because at that time you had to change near the end where you had the cruiserweights and the lightweight guys doing all those moves, and now you got, like you said, you've got this big built up guy doing the cruiserweight stuff, and you're like, okay, well, wait a minute, that right there is that adapting the change, and now if you got the big guys doing your moves, then where am I going to be placed? Do I even have a spot after seeing that?
Yeah. And that's where I think if the business would have evolved to where guys like Lesnar, I mean, eventually he settled into his style where, he's a suplex machine and he doesn't have to do a lot. I think that nonetheless, there would have been some challenges. To say that I would have had to recreate myself is an understatement.
Yeah, basically what the bigger guys were doing were, the little guy was saying, "Catch me if you can." They're like, "All right, well, if you do this, I'm gonna do it my way." But that's
exactly.
What he attempted to do when during WrestleMania, which didn't work out. But but luckily after that, he learned as well that he stayed. Yeah, that he stayed. I remember seeing that, and I did. There wasn't many times where I would jump out of my seat. I mean, I did with the whole Mick Foley and the Hell in the Cell, but so after that time, there wasn't anything that really made me jump. And I think when I saw that, I jumped and had to go in the other room because I didn't even want to look or hear about it.
Yeah, that's that one spot where he was attempting the shooting star on Angle, where I think Angle was too far out.
Yeah.
And I remember watching that and going, how the hell is he going to hit this? It's a lot tighter than a floating moonsault or a big splash or something. And that was one time, and I think another time was Taker and Shawn Michaels, and Taker does a dive over the top, and they did the spot where the cameraman gets hit, and Taker landed right on his head. Those are two times I just was like, oh Jesus, they're dead.
Yeah, I think Lesnar would have actually been smarter if he'd done a frog splash from there instead of trying to do the shooting star. It would have he would have been a lot safer in it. And I mean, obviously, he was trying to showcase and get that WrestleMania moment, which in turn he did, but not the way he wanted it to. Because everyone's looking for that moment to be remembered, and sadly, for the history of WrestleMania, that moment's going to be remembered for the wrong way.
Yeah, totally agree.
Is there any other things you want to discuss?
I don't know, man. I think we covered quite a bit. You tell me.
I think we were right there on the tail of the list there.
Sounds good, man.
Things I had for the people that are listening, they want to follow you. Like you said, you're a personal trainer and stuff. Where can they follow you and stuff? I know that you do upload videos on YouTube of a lot of the personal training stuff as well.
Yeah. If people want to find me, I just use my shoot name, Jimi Varner, JimiVarner, on all the social media platforms. I do online personal training. That was really expedited as far as a business offering when we had the pandemic and lockdown. So I'll do a lot of training, consulting, etc. online, as well as personal training in person in the Michigan, the Oakland County area. And basically, amateur or part-time wrestler that could always be seduced out of retirement, which I'm never retiring.
Nobody retires. You don't retire until your last breath on this earth. Once you become a part of the wrestling business, you can say that you're done and retired. You're never retired. That's how it goes.
That's the truth, man. But it's a great business, and there's a reason why guys just can't walk away from it, because it's as much as it might be ill-advised to keep going, there's just something really special about so many different aspects of our business.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Well, like I said, thank you for coming on here and sharing your stories and your information and your knowledge of that. Even though it was a short time that you were in the business, you definitely traveled in those few years that you were a part of the independent wrestling scene.
I got to be a part of it during a really special time that can only really be completely appreciated in hindsight. So I guess in the words of the great Steve Austin, I'll see your ass down the road.
All right. Thank you.
Wait, I'll see your ass down the road.
There you go.
I'll stick to my day job.